Okay, so when you picture Cuba, you probably think of vintage cars, right? Or maybe that incredible music, the historic cities, but the island holds this other, more delicate secret. It's actually a world capital for some of the planet's most fascinating and frankly bizarre flowers. So let's dive into the extraordinary world of Cuban orchids.
So you have to ask, right? What is it about this island? How did Cuba become such a powerhouse of orchid evolution, with a diversity that rivals just about anywhere else on Earth? Well, that's the central mystery we're going to unravel today.
And to get us started, let's just throw a number out there, 312. That's how many different orchid species have been officially documented across Cuba. For a single island nation, that is a staggering amount of variety. It's a true global hotspot for the entire orchid family. But here's the real kicker. Almost a third of those species are strictly endemic. That means they evolved right here on this island, and you can't find them anywhere else on the entire planet. This isn't just a collection of pretty flowers. It's a living, breathing evolutionary workshop.
Now, this incredible biodiversity wasn't just discovered overnight. No way. It's actually the result of centuries of really painstaking exploration, from the very first colonial botanists all the way to modern-day scientists using genetic analysis. I mean, this journey of discovery goes way, way back. It started in 1799 with a catalog of just 10 species. A century later, that number had jumped to 188. But the real breakthrough came in 1938 with Julian Acuña Galé's super comprehensive work. And you know what? The discoveries haven't stopped. That list is still being updated today, which just goes to show you how much there is left to learn.
So where are all these different orchids hiding? Well, Cuba is this amazing mosaic of microclimates and really unique geology. To understand the orchids, you've got to understand the land. So come on, let's take a quick tour across the island.
Okay, first stop is the west. This region is famous for these dramatic, rounded limestone mountains. They're called mogotes, and also for these unique coastal lowlands with brilliant white sand.
And this is a perfect illustration of how orchids adapt. You've got the Encyclia Vinyalensis that just clings right to those sun-baked limestone cliffs. Down in the lowlands, the Encyclia piriformis is only found in those specific white sand habitats. And then you get the incredibly picky Encyclia boeckert, an endemic that will only grow on 3 specific types of trees. I mean, talk about specialization. That makes it both totally unique and incredibly vulnerable.
All right, now let's head into the island's center. Here, the Guamuhaya Mountains create a completely different world. It's one that's constantly draped in fog and mist, a humid, high-altitude cloud forest.
Now this is the perfect habitat for the delicate, miniature orchids of the Lepanthus genus, which just thrive in these damp ravines. You'll also find the more common, but still beautiful, Comparatia falcata. But what gets scientists really excited is that they've spotted an unidentified Brachia species here, a tantalizing clue that these cloud forests are still holding on to some undiscovered secrets.
Okay, our final stop is the east, home to the highest mountains and the island's most extreme soils. The ground here is rich in heavy metals, like serpentine, which is actually toxic to most plants. But for some orchids, it's paradise.
These unique soils have basically created a factory for new endemic species. The entire genus Atopoglossum is found only here and nowhere else. You've got climbing orchids like Vanilla claviculata that are perfectly adapted to these specialized tresical forests. And one of the most amazing recent finds is Tetramica riparia, a tiny little orchid with flowers smaller than a dime living right on the banks of mountain streams. Just incredible.
So if you kind of zoom out and look at the island as a whole, a few key groups, or genera, really run the show. Lepanthes, those tiny cloud forest jewels, they lead the pack with 28 species. And they're followed closely by the incredibly diverse Epidendrome and Encilia genera. Each one has its own little army of specialists adapted to every single corner of Cuba.
All right, now that we've seen the big picture, let's zoom way in and meet a couple of Cuba's most famous residents. These are the orchids that have really captured the imagination of scientists and the public for years.
First up, the legendary Ghost Orchid. Now, it's an epiphyte, which just means it grows on other plants, in this case trees. And believe me, it is every bit as strange as its name suggests. This thing has no leaves, none. Instead, its greenish roots just cling to the bark, and they pull double duty. They both anchor the plant and perform photosynthesis. It's a true biological wonder.
And here's a fun fact for you. Contrary to what a lot of people think, it was actually discovered in Cuba first, way back in 1844, before it was ever found in Florida. Its stunning white flower is often said to look like a little jumping frog, but this ghost is super elusive. Today, its only confirmed stronghold in Cuba is deep within the protected forests of Guanahacabi's National Park.
So, to attract its pollinator, which is a giant sphinx moth, the ghost orchid puts out this powerful fragrance at night and in the super early morning. But it's not sweet or floral. It's this sharp, fruity scent that people often compare to apples. It's all part of its mysterious charm.
Okay, from the rare and mysterious, let's switch gears to the popular and beloved. Meet Encyclia phoenicia, known throughout Cuba by a much more delicious name, the chocolate orchid.
And you can probably guess why it gets that name. Its flowers release this rich fragrance that smells, well, remarkably like chocolate or vanilla. It pumps out this scent in the morning to attract its main pollinators, bees. And unlike the ghost orchid, this species is widespread. You can find it in dry forests all over the island, and it's famous for the wild color variations in its lip, which can be anything from pink to a deep, rich violet.
But, and you knew there was a but coming, this incredible natural heritage is fragile. Cuba's orchids face a growing list of threats, and a really dedicated group of scientists and conservationists are in a race against time to protect them. And it really boils down to this classic conflict. On one side, you have threats like poaching for the illegal plant trade, climate change driving more intense hurricanes, and competition from invasive species. But fighting back, on the other side, is this amazing network of protectors, dedicated facilities like the Soroa Orchidarium, a strong system of national parks, and international regulations.
And right at the heart of this fight is the Soroa Orchidarium. This isn't just some beautiful garden, it's a critical scientific institution. Its mission is really threefold. First, to propagate the rarest species so they can be reintroduced into the wild. Second, to train the next generation of Cuban botanists. And finally, to act as this vital hub for research and documentation.
So after seeing their diversity, their strange adaptations, and the big fight to save them, it all leads to one final really crucial question. Why does any of this matter? Why should we care so much about a few hundred species of flowers on a single island? Well, because orchids are so much more than just beautiful. They are, and this is so important, they are the canaries in the coal mine for our ecosystems. Remember how picky so many of them are? Their complex relationships with specific pollinators and fungi and host trees make them incredibly sensitive to the tiniest environmental changes. When the orchids start to disappear, it's a huge warning sign that the entire forest is in trouble. So when we look at these strange and wonderful flowers, we're seeing more than just plants. We're seeing a story of evolution, of adaptation, and of survival. And the final question they pose? Well, that question is really for all of us. What are they trying to tell us about the health of their home, and by extension, the health of our entire planet?